If I told you that a 91st minute game-winning World Cup goal was completely predictable, like down to a 65.7% statistical certainty by an AI model, before the ball was even kicked, would you believe
I
me?
mean, most people wouldn't, right?
Exactly. Usually when we talk about a late knockout goal, we just default to this, this myth of the lucky bounce. We call it magic.
Yeah.
But today we are basically killing that myth.
We really are, because when you actually look at the underlying data of yesterday's monumental 2026 World Cup round of 16 clash between Spain and Portugal and Dallas, that whole narrative of a spontaneous miracle just kind of falls apart.
Yeah,
You realize you're looking at, well, cold structural inevitability.
absolutely. So welcome to the deep dive. Today our mission is to unpack that incredible 1-0 Spain victory at AT&T Stadium. And to do that, you, our listener, have handed us a truly massive and honestly super diverse stack of sources to synthesize.
It's a great stack today.
Right. We are pulling from a match preview with starting lineups via Morocco World News, a really fascinating post-match tactical breakdown from the YouTube channel Tactical Logic AI, some pre-game analysis from RotoWire, historical data from a Wikipedia entry on the Iberian Derby, a highly combustible press conference report from Fox Sports, and finally a 2025 peer-reviewed sports psychology paper from the Journal of Sports Science and Nutrition.
Quite the mix.
Yeah, it is. Okay, let's unpack this because we aren't just reading you a box score today. We are going to dissect the century-old history, the underlying psychology of crowd noise, and the ruthless tactical geometry that made Mikel Merino's 91st minute dagger inescapable.
Yeah, and to really understand the mechanics of what happened on the pitch yesterday, we have to start with the psychological weight pressing down on these players before the whistle even blew. You just can't analyze a 2026 knockout match without factoring in the historical bad blood of the Iberian Derby.
Oh, for sure.
The Wikipedia data in our sources shows this was their 42nd meeting. I mean, this is a rivalry that dates all the way back to December 1921.
Over a century of friction. That's just wild.
Yeah.
And the recent tournament history has been particularly theatrical. I was looking through the notes on the 2010 World Cup round of 16. Spain wins that match 1-0, but it was decided by a David Villa goal that post-match ESPN Access technology proved was actually 0.22 meters offside.
Right, a tiny margin that created a massive historical grievance for Portugal.
A huge one.
And then you jump to the 2012 Euro semifinals. A brutal scoreless draw after extra time. Spain wins the penalty shootout 4-2, and Cristiano Ronaldo, who had, placed himself fifth in the penalty order to take the glory shot, famously never even gets to step up to the spot. The shootout just ends before his turn.
Which has to be so agonizing, like just standing there. And then fast forward to the 2018 World Cup group stage, and we get that insane 3-3 draw where Ronaldo scores a hat-trick, highlighted by that 88th minute free kick to equalize.
Exactly. And that pendulum swung right back again just last year.
Yeah.
The 2025 Nations League final in Munich. Another dramatic 2-2 draw, but Portugal finally gets their revenge, winning the shootout 5-3.
See, I always wonder how much that history actually matters to the guys currently wearing the boots. I mean, is it just media hype to sell television commercials, or does a missed penalty from 14 years ago genuinely alter a player's performance today?
Oh, it absolutely alters their cognitive baseline.
Really?
Yeah. Think of a historical rivalry, not as a storyline for the fans, but as an emotional algorithm for the players. Every past grievance, every controversial offside call, it permanently alters their real-time risk assessment. Like, if you walk into a negotiation with a business rival you've been battling for a decade, your emotional baseline isn't neutral.
Right.
Your nervous system is already flooded with cortisol before you even sit down. For these athletes, a century of data points dictates a massive cognitive load. They are hypervigilant from the very first second.
And that cognitive load must have been just magnified by the environment in Dallas. The media circus surrounding this specific tournament has been completely unhinged.
Oh, totally.
Your sources included a Fox Sports report breaking down a pre-match press conference with Portugal's 41-year-old captain, Cristiano Ronaldo. And honestly, reading through his quotes, it felt incredibly volatile.
Volatile is the perfect word for it. He came into the press room and immediately adopted a highly defensive posture. He conceded, I'm not the player I used to be, but then instantly pivoted to pointing out his 3 goals in the tournament so far.
Right.
He then launched into a direct attack on the press corps, stating, "You have been trying to kill me for the past 23 years.
He even singled out a specific journalist. Like, he literally pointed into the crowd and said, "I know he does not like me. I remember people's faces very well."
Yeah, that was intense.
He capped the whole thing off by insisting he will leave this tournament with a 1,000% clear conscience. But the environment he's speaking into is just pure chaos. To give you a sense of the noise in Dallas right now, the Fox Sports article covering Ronaldo's press conference featured a massive sidebar headline that read, "Trump call World Cup fury erupts as FIFA overturn U.S. star's red card."
Right. And we should be very clear to our listener right here. We are not taking any political stances or validating that sidebar.
No, not at all.
We are simply reporting the exact layout of the source material to illustrate the sheer volume of external narratives swirling around this event, both sporting and political. The ecosystem surrounding these players is just an absolute frenzy.
Yeah, my question is really about Ronaldo's reaction to that frenzy. When an aging superstar points at reporters and talks about 1,000% clear conscience, is that a symptom of mental fragility? Like, is the cognitive load finally cracking him, or is there a strategic element to acting like a lightning rod?
Well, the initial media reaction usually leans toward fragility, sure. But the 2025 study from the Journal of Sports Science and Nutrition offers a totally different, almost Machiavellian framework for this.
Okay.
The study examines fan identity and its psychological impact on athletic performance, which directly applies to how players process environmental hostility.
This is the mixed methods research looking at 120 professional athletes, right? They used a tool called the Fan Identification Scale, or the FIS.
Correct. The researchers paired the FIS with cognitive anxiety inventories to measure how crowds physically and mentally alter a player. And the quantitative data is fascinating.
What did they find?
They found that playing in front of a supportive home crowd is a massive positive predictor of performance. It shows a beta value of 0.53.
Wait, pause right there. For those of us who don't spend our weekends reading statistical methodology, what does a beta value of 0.53 actually mean in plain English?
Think of a beta value, like a volume dial that connects two different speakers. A beta of 0.53 means the connection is strong and positive.
Okay.
When the volume of the home crowd goes up, the player's self-confidence and measurable on-field output, like their passing accuracy, well, that turns up significantly right along with it.
Got it. But the away crowd turns a different dial.
A completely different dial, and in the opposite direction. Hostile away crowds showed a beta value of negative 0.28 on performance.
Ouch.
Yeah, it actively turns down their accuracy and effectiveness because it turns up two types of anxiety. The first is cognitive anxiety, which is the mental worry, the racing thoughts and loss of focus. The second is somatic anxiety.
Somatic meaning physical, like your body's involuntary reaction.
Exactly, the physical symptoms. A tight chest, heavy legs, a racing heart.
Yeah.
The researchers did qualitative interviews where athletes described the home experience under the theme carried by the crowd, while the away experience was themed hostility and isolation.
But see, this match wasn't in Madrid or Lisbon. It was in Arlington, Texas, in a massive neutral venue.
Right.
You had 70,000 screaming fans, completely divided between Spanish red and Portuguese green. If a home crowd turns up your confidence dial and an away crowd spikes your somatic anxiety, what happens in a split stadium? Do the two energies just cancel each other out, or does it create a toxic wall of white noise?
It creates an incredibly demanding psychological environment, honestly,
Right.
which is exactly where the researchers identified a third critical theme used by seasoned athletes. It's called mental shielding.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the mechanics of mental shielding apply to literally anyone navigating a high-stress environment.
Absolutely. Mental shielding is a deliberate, active coping strategy. It involves specific psychological techniques like intense visual anchoring and highly regulated internal self-talk. It basically acts as a sensory gate.
Like a filter.
Yeah. When Ronaldo is pointing at a journalist to control the narrative, or when a Spanish midfielder is ignoring 35,000 booing Portuguese fans, they are actively gating out the external noise to maintain their structural focus.
That makes a lot of sense.
If you are walking into a hostile boardroom, you obviously can't control the away crowd sitting across the table.
Yeah.
But if you understand how to use internal self-talk to build that shield, you can physically prevent their hostility from spiking your somatic anxiety. Your heart rate stays steady, and your cognitive baseline remains neutral.
So you build a wall inside your head so your body doesn't betray you.
I love that. So we have this massive historical rivalry, an absolute media circus, and tens of thousands of fans testing the mental shielding of 22 guys on the pitch. Let's finally step onto the grass. You got the lineups from Morocco World News and RotoWire. How did these two teams actually set up tactically?
Well, the tactical blueprints reveal a massive clash of philosophies. Luis de la Fuente, managing Spain, and Roberto Martinez for Portugal. Both utilize variations of a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1 structure.
Spain deployed Unai Simon in goal, behind a backline of Pedro Porro, Aymeric Laporte, Pau Cubarsí, and Marc Cucurella.
And I noticed Portugal opted for Diogo Costa in goal, protected by Cancelo, Ruben Dias, Renato Veiga, and Nuno Mendes.
Yeah, but the real contrast emerges in the midfield and attack. Spain utilized a trio of Rodri, Pedri, and Dani Olmo to act as a possession engine. They were feeding Lamine Yamal, Alex Baena, and Mikel Oyarzabal up top.
Okay.
Portugal countered with João Neves and Vitinha anchoring the midfield, supporting a highly aggressive transition attack of Pedro Neto, Bruno Fernandes, and João Felix, who notably started over Rafael Leao, and they were all tasked with supplying Ronaldo.
On paper, a 4-3-3 against a 4-3-3 sounds like a mirror match. But looking at the tactical logic AI breakdown, they were playing two fundamentally different sports. Spain was relying on something the analysis called central possession overloads. How exactly does an overload work mechanically?
It's pretty cool, actually. Imagine the midfield is a grid. Spain doesn't just want to pass the ball back and forth. They want to mathematically outnumber Portugal in very specific central squares of that grid.
Like crowding a zone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If Portugal has two midfielders in a zone, Spain will instruct their wingers or fullbacks to drift centrally. So Spain has 4 players in that same zone. That is an overload.
Gotcha.
It traps the opponent in a numbers game they can't win, weaving this suffocating web of short passes that forces the defending team to constantly chase the ball and exhaust themselves.
So Spain uses geometry to starve the opponent of oxygen. And Portugal's response to this was to adopt a purely reactive posture. Because of that heavy cognitive load and Spain's numerical advantage in the middle, Portugal decided to sit deep, absorb the pressure, and try to launch vertical, lightning-fast counterattacks down the sidelines to feed Ronaldo.
Yeah, and the friction between those two strategies produced a defining statistical anomaly. If you just look at possession, Spain held 55% of the ball to Portugal's 45%. That doesn't sound like total domination.
It's not at all.
But possession percentage is a flawed metric. It's not about how long you hold the ball. It's about the spatial value of where you hold it.
Right, the penalty box touches. The data here is just staggering. Spain registered 28 touches inside the opposition's penalty area. Portugal registered 11.
28-11. By constantly utilizing those central overloads, Spain was dragging Portuguese defenders out of position and accessing the most dangerous zones on the pitch. Portugal's attacks, meanwhile, were breaking down on the perimeter.
Wow.
But we have to acknowledge the human element of how Portugal survived to the 91st minute under that kind of siege. I mean, they relied on sheer, unbelievable grit.
Yeah, the defensive data from Tactical Logic proves it. Portugal won 56% of total duels across the pitch, but their aerial dominance was practically a superpower. They won 75% of their aerial battles, 9 out of 12.
Unbelievable.
Right. Every time Spain managed to work the ball wide and attempt to cross, Ruben Dias or Renato Veiga just launched themselves into the Texas sky and violently repelled the ball. Portugal was forced into 49 ball recoveries and 23 desperate clearances.
And that requires an immense physical and somatic toll. They were emptying their bodily tanks just to keep the scoreboard at 0-0. And on the rare occasions they did manage to clear the ball and attempt a counterattack, they ran straight into a Spanish structural wall named Rodri.
Oh, I want to focus on Rodri because the YouTube analysis described him as the ultimate control anchor.
Yes.
He wasn't spraying 50-yard Hollywood passes. He wasn't making highlight reel tackles. So how was he single-handedly destroying Portugal's transition game?
He does it through flawless spatial mechanics. Rodri essentially shadow boxes the opponent's strategy.
What do you mean?
While Spain is attacking, Rodri is scanning the pitch and calculating where Portugal will want to pass the ball the second they win it back. He positions his body in those exact passing lanes before the transition even begins. He dictates the geometry. If Portugal wants to find Ronaldo centrally, Rodri's positioning physically blocks that angle, forcing Portugal to pass the ball sideways or backwards. And when necessary, he commits smart, clinical fouls to completely reset the play.
It's almost like watching a cold, calculating algorithm slowly dismantle a human being. Which brings up a larger philosophical question, really. When you watch Spain's AI-like precision and players like Rodri who operate purely on spatial math, does it strip the raw emotion out of the game? Is football becoming too mathematical?
That tension, mathematical structure versus human grit and emotion, that is the defining narrative of modern sports. And in this match, that tension reached its absolute breaking point as the clock ticked past the 70-minute mark.
The legs start getting heavy.
Exactly. Physical exhaustion began to set in, and the game evolved into a high-stakes chess match between the two managers.
Roberto Martinez makes his moves first for Portugal, and he opts for chaos. At the 71-minute mark, he throws on Diogo Dalot and Rafael Leao, looking for pure sprint speed. 12 minutes later, he subs on Bernardo Silva and Francisco Conceição. He is desperately trying to stretch the field, hoping Spain makes one mathematical error they can exploit.
In contrast, Luis de la Fuente delivers what the tactical logic analysis labeled an absolute masterstroke of game management.
Yeah.
He doesn't panic, and he doesn't abandon his overloads. Instead, in the 75th minute, he brings on Ferran Torres for a more direct wide threat. Then, crucially, at 85 minutes, he introduces Mikel Merino.
Why is Merino the masterstroke?
Because Portugal was operating in a severe low block.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
For our listener, a low block means a team has packed all 10 of their outfield players deep into their own defensive third of the pitch, acting like a compressed human barricade.
Sounds tough to break down.
Oh, trying to pass through a low block is like trying to thread a needle in a hurricane. De La Fuente knew Portugal's low block was physically exhausted from 85 minutes of chasing Spain's midfield overloads. Merino was brought on to be a dynamic, late-arriving runner, someone with fresh legs who could exploit the tiny blind spots of a tired defensive line.
Ah, I see.
He changed the personnel to attack the exhaustion, but he didn't sacrifice an ounce of the overarching structure.
Which brings us right to the climax, the 91st minute. Spain is patiently recycling the ball on the perimeter. Portugal's low block is gasping for air. Finally, a tiny spatial lane opens up. The substitutes link up flawlessly. Ferran Torres spots the gap and delivers the assist, and Mikel Merino arrives with fresh legs and perfect timing to smash it home. 1-0, Spain.
And this is exactly where the underlying math completely shatters the illusion of a lucky late bounce. If we look at the expected goals metric, or XG, the true story is revealed.
Explain how XG works in this context.
Sure, so expected goals assigns a mathematical probability to every single shot taken in a match, based on historical data of similar shots. It factors in the angle, the distance, and the position of the defenders. It basically measures the true quality of the chances a team creates, filtering out luck.
Okay.
Spain ended the match with an XG of 1.77. Portugal had a meager 0.60.
So Spain engineered high-quality, high-probability chances, while Portugal was basically surviving on low-percentage prayers.
Exactly. And when tactical logic plugged this underlying spatial data into their predictive AI model, the probabilities were staggering. Based on the quality of the overloads and the touches in the box, the AI calculated that Spain had a 65.7% probability of winning the match. Portugal had a tiny 12% chance.
That's crazy. Even in the 99th minute, when Portugal's João Neves had that terrifying header that nearly gave the entire stadium a heart attack, the math proves the panic was just dramatic tension. That specific chance registered as a minuscule 0.03 expected goals. It looked scary, but statistically it was almost impossible for it to go in.
Yeah, the math doesn't lie.
So what does this all mean? It means Spain didn't get lucky, they won the math. Portugal relied on sheer human grit, and they were brilliant at it, clearing crosses and throwing their bodies on the line. But eventually, physical and cognitive exhaustion caught up with them. Spain's structure simply outlasted Portugal's emotion.
That is the ultimate synthesis of your sources right there.
Yeah.
This result wasn't just a number on a score sheet. It was the culmination of a century-old rivalry, immense psychological pressure managed through deliberate mental shielding, and a ruthless tactical geometry that slowly, inevitably dismantled the opposition.
Yeah.
And the takeaway for you listening to this is incredibly practical. Whether you are walking into a tense negotiation, heavily burdened by historical friction, or facing down a hostile boardroom that threatens to spike your somatic anxiety, the keys to outlasting the opposition remain the same.
Yeah, definitely.
You cannot rely on raw emotion to survive. You must maintain your structural discipline, and you must actively utilize mental shielding to protect your focus from the noise.
It's incredible to see the history, the psychology, and the math all intersect perfectly on a soccer pitch in Texas.
Yeah.
But I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder today. We started this deep dive by talking about the assumed magic of a 91st minute goal. But if AI models like tactical logic can look at expected goals, possession overloads, and penalty box touches to predict that exact late game outcome with a 65% statistical certainty, well, are we rapidly approaching a future where sports are completely solved by algorithms? And if we are, how will the athletes of tomorrow have to train in order to break the math, defy the probabilities, and bring the unpredictable magic back to the beautiful game?
That is the defining question for the next generation of global sports.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you on the next one.